You know that feeling. December shows up and you genuinely don't know where the year went. You remember January. You remember a few things in the middle. The rest is fog. And the scary part is that it keeps getting worse. When you were 8, a single summer lasted a lifetime. Now entire years vanish like they were weekends. Most people shrug and say that's just getting older, but the real answer is far stranger. Time is not speeding up. Your brain is simply measuring less of it. Here's the thing nobody tells you. You don't have a clock in your head. There is no organ that tracks minutes. No internal stopwatch ticking away behind your eyes. Your brain does something much cruder. It estimates time after the fact, using one simple ingredient: memories. The more new memories your brain records in a stretch of time, the longer that stretch feels when you look back on it. Fewer memories, shorter time. That's the whole trick. And once you understand it, everything about your vanishing years starts to make sense. Let's go back to 1897. A French philosopher named Paul Janet proposed an idea that sounds almost too simple. He suggested that you judge the length of a year by comparing it to your entire life so far. When you're 8 years old, 1 year is an eighth of everything you have ever known. It's enormous. When you're 40, that same year is 1/40th of your life. A rounding error. By Janet's math, the year you experience at 8 feels roughly 5 times longer than the year you experience at 40. Same calendar, same number of days, completely different size inside your head. A few years before that, the psychologist William James had already noticed the same thing. In his book The Principles of Psychology, he wrote that the years seem to grow hollow and collapse as we age. His explanation: first, your childhood is packed with them. First day of school, first bike, first betrayal, first kiss. Every first becomes a vivid, heavy memory. But as you get older, the firsts dry up. Life becomes repetition. And repetition, James realized, is where time goes to die. Why would repetition erase time? Because your brain is ruthless about storage. It does not record what it already knows. Think about your commute. The first time you drove to your job, you remembered everything. The streets, the weird billboard, the wrong turn. By the 100th time, you arrive and remember nothing at all. You were technically awake for 40 minutes. Your brain saved approximately 0 of it. Scientists call this a schema, a mental template for familiar experiences. Once the template exists, your brain stops filming and just stamps the template. Efficient, extremely, but here's the cost. When you look back on a year that was mostly templates, there's almost nothing in the file. And a year with nothing in the file feels like it lasted 5 minutes. So the conveyor belt of your life isn't actually moving faster. Your brain is just photographing it less often. And it gets worse. Your internal sense of time doesn't just depend on memory. It also depends on chemistry. In the 1990s, a researcher named Peter Mangan ran a brutally simple experiment. He asked people in their early 20s to count out 3 minutes in their heads. No clock, no counting out loud. Then he asked people in their 60s to do the same thing. The young group nailed it. They said 3 minutes had passed when on average, about 3 minutes and 3 seconds had actually elapsed. The older group, they didn't say stop until roughly 3 minutes and 40 seconds had gone by. Their internal clocks were running slow, which means the world around them felt like it was running fast. Same minutes, different brains. Researchers believe dopamine is part of the reason. The chemical pulse that helps your brain tick off time peaks in your youth and declines from there. The metronome inside you literally slows down with age, and everything outside you seems to accelerate in comparison. But here's where it stops being depressing and starts being useful. Because if time is built from memories, then time can be manufactured. A neuroscientist named David Eagleman proved this in the most dramatic way possible. He was haunted by a question. When people survive car crashes and falls, they always say the same thing. Time slowed down. Everything went into slow motion. Was that real? Does fear actually slow time? So Eagleman did something insane. He took volunteers up a 15-story tower and dropped them, backwards, into a net. No rope, a 50-meter free fall at over 100 kilometers per hour. Then he asked each volunteer to estimate how long their own fall lasted, using a stopwatch. Here's what he found. People remembered their own fall as lasting about a third longer than the falls they watched other people take. The terror didn't actually slow time down in the moment, but it forced the brain to record the experience in extreme density, layer upon layer of detail. And when the brain played that memory back, all that extra detail read as extra duration. More memory equals more time. Fear is just one way to write a very thick file. Eagleman's lab also documented something called the oddball effect. Show someone a sequence of identical images, then sneak in one strange image, and people swear the strange one stayed on screen longer. It didn't. The duration was identical, but novelty grabs the brain's attention. The brain records more, and more recording feels like more time. Read that again. Novelty literally stretches time, not metaphorically, measurably. There's a name for how this plays out in real life. The psychologist Claudia Hammond calls it the holiday paradox. Think about the last trip you took somewhere new. While you were living it, the days flew by. But when you got home, the week felt like a month. How can the same week feel short and long at the same time? Because you have two clocks. The in-the-moment clock, which runs fast when you're having fun, and the looking back clock, which measures how much memory got recorded. A week in a new country writes more memory than a month at home. So in retrospect, it expands. Meanwhile, a routine month at home writes almost nothing and collapses to the size of a day. Your boring weeks feel okay while they're happening. They just don't survive in memory. They get deleted on the way out. Now ask yourself an uncomfortable question. How much of your last year was new? Not pleasant, not productive, new. How many days were genuinely different from the day before them? Because this is where the modern world becomes a problem. Your life is more optimized than any human life in history. Same desk, same apps, same 15 websites, same shows, same routes, same coffee. And when you do get a free moment, you reach for a glowing rectangle and scroll. Here's the brutal part. Scrolling feels stimulating, but it produces almost no durable memory. Try it right now. Try to remember 3 specific things you scrolled past yesterday. Anything. Most people can't. That's hours of your life with no file saved. Your phone is a time deletion device. Not because it wastes time, but because it convinces your brain that nothing worth recording is happening. Ancient humans never had this problem. Every day on the savannah carried risk, change, weather, movement, threat, surprise. Their lives were short, but they were dense. Your life is long, and your brain is fast-forwarding through it. So how do you slow time down? Not with hacks. With density. You give your brain things it cannot template. Take a different route and the commute reappears in memory. Learn a skill that makes you clumsy again. Because being a beginner forces the brain to record everything. Eat somewhere you can't pronounce. Travel without the itinerary. Rearrange the furniture. Talk to a stranger. Put the phone in another room for one evening. And notice how long the evening suddenly becomes. None of this changes actual time. It changes recorded time. And recorded time is the only time you get to keep. A year of routine and a year of novelty cost exactly the same 365 days. One of them disappears. The other one becomes part of you. There's one more twist worth knowing. Scientists who study memory talk about something called the reminiscence bump. When older people look back across their whole lives, the years they remember most vividly are roughly ages 15 to 25. Why? Because that's the decade of firsts. First love, first move, first job, first identity. The brain wrote those years in bold. But here's what the research actually implies. The bump isn't locked to your youth, it's locked to novelty. People who emigrate at 40 develop a second bump. People who reinvent their lives develop new dense decades. The bold years aren't behind you. They're just waiting for you to do something unrepeatable. So no, you're not losing time. You never had time, you only ever had memories. And every December that arrives out of nowhere is just your brain handing you a thin file and calling it a year. You know that feeling. December shows up and you genuinely don't know where the year went. Now you do. It went unrecorded. The year wasn't short, the file was. And starting today, the thickness of next year's file is entirely up to you.